former President Donald Trump, a US president indeed, who may well be the future US president, who knows, is going to take the stand today to testify in the civil fraud trial brought by New York Attorney General Letitia James, who is seeking $250 million in damages and to ban Donald Trump from doing business in the state. Meanwhile, he's been getting some joy from some latest polls. He's currently ahead of President Joe Biden in 5 key swing states. That's just a year ahead of the 2024 election. That's according to the latest poll. This leaves Donald Trump ahead of Joe Biden by 48% to 44% on average. So joining me now to discuss all this is Steve Gill. He's a former advisor to the Clinton and Bush administrations. Good morning to you, Steve.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you so much for joining us. Let's talk about this trial first of all and what we expect to hear, because we've got other family members giving evidence, including Ivanka Trump, daughter, although she's not actually involved. She got struck out of the actual charges being brought against Donald Trump, Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, and indeed the Trump Organization. Just remind us a little bit about what this trial is actually about, because it's not one of the 4 criminal trials, is it?
Now, this is only civil. It only is a fight about money. And interesting, you mentioned Letitia James. She's the district attorney who brought this case, claiming that Donald Trump defrauded insurance companies and banks by overvaluing real estate properties that he owns. Interestingly, Donald Trump has pointed out that those properties are actually more valuable than those documents provided. One of the key documents in the case is the valuation of Mar-a-Lago down in Florida. The court is saying it's worth $18 million. And Julia, you and I could put together a team today to buy it for that and close tomorrow.
Damn right.
It's worth close to $600 or $700 million. And as the Trumps keep pointing out, none of the banks, none of the insurance companies are claiming they were damaged or hurt at all. There is no victim in this case. And yet Letitia James ran for her position as district attorney, claiming she would, quote, get Trump. And that's what this case is really all about.
You know, because one of the arguments about this was, it's not a criminal trial. Was there really a victim? Not really. Although, of course, when, if you are basically getting loans, you have to be accurate about the value of your property that you're securing those loans against. He was on record. He's done it. He said this in interviews. He said this, Donald Trump, many times before he became president. Yeah, we'd basically bump up the value of our properties to get loans. But then, of course, you try and and he wanted to be, on the Forbes, richest lists and things. And then they would downplay it as much as they could when it came to the tax bills. Of course, we've never seen his full tax statements, even his personal ones, have we? So he kind of wanted it both ways. But the key thing about this case is the judge has basically already decided the case, hasn't he? This is Judge Arthur Engeron. He's already found that the business that was run by the Trump family deceived banks, insurers and others, massively overvalued assets and wealth, making deals and securing loans. So this trial now isn't really about guilt or innocence. It's about the amount of damages he has to pay.
Yeah, and it's interesting. This judge has really ignored the law in many ways, but this valuation of the property came up as part of what's called a motion for summary judgment, which under the law says if there's no factual dispute, the judge can simply rule that based upon the facts that are undisputed, here's my approach to what I believe should be done. The problem is when you've got a dispute of whether or not Mar-a-Lago, for example, is worth $18 million, as the judge asserts, or $300 to $600 million, that's clearly still a factual dispute. Yeah. And the judge went beyond what he should have done when he started making these summary judgment rulings. I think this is on appeal. It's going to get wiped out. This is a judge who's very partisan. As Trump keeps pointing out, his clerk is whispering in his ear.
All judges, all attorney generals, everyone are partisan. That's the American system. And I think your system, I don't think it's a justice system because of that. I don't think people should be, I think we often say unelected, unaccountable judges, but actually, look, be careful what you wish for because the American system has got that. But actually, that means that there is that partisanship. But I think it's a bit rich for certainly Trump supporters, including his own family, to criticize this when they're quite happy to pack the court and the bench with as many of their supporters as they want. But look, this is just one of many court cases. This just involves money. There's no chance of Donald Trump going to jail as a result of this. He's still got 4 other criminal trials to go. What is still fascinating, I think, to most of us here in the UK, we have people who've lost their jobs as MPs in this country a few years back for claiming for a bath plug and a sofa and a telly, trying to claim for sort of cleaning their moat. Sort of people who have moats who are MPs in this country, even though they didn't even get that claim through and their MPs' expenses. you're ousted from a job here in the UK, for attending a birthday party during lockdown if you're the Prime Minister. So this is different league stuff. And yet he could still be not just the presidential candidate for Republicans, he could still be elected as president whilst facing all these criminal trials, possibly even being convicted in one or more of these criminal trials. And the polls suggest he is on course, Donald Trump, to beat Joe Biden in a 2024 runoff.
Yeah, as you mentioned, in the United States, it's not really an election of the entire country. It's state by state by state with the electoral system. And a new poll shows Donald Trump beating Joe Biden in 5 or 6 of the key swing states. And this has the Democrats freaking out. One of Barack Obama's top political advisors today is urging Biden to drop out because they're not just concerned about losing the White House, but that he will be a drag and cost the Democrats control of the U.S. Senate and keep the Republicans in charge of the U.S. House and maybe win races, in municipal elections as well. So the Democrats are freaking out at the weakness of Joe Biden. And I told one of my friends lately that this is really a battle between a guy who's facing sentences versus a guy who can't even form a sentence. And it gets worse and worse with Joe Biden's mental acuity. And I think people are freaking out about that, too.
Yeah, I have to say, God, I think the choices aren't great here in the UK. But they're a damn sight better than the choices Americans have got. Just finally, I do this to you. Everyone we speak to in American politics, if you had to put your house on it right now, whether it's worth as much or less than Mar-a-Lago, if you had to put your house on it right now, who's the president come January 2025?
I think at this point you have to assume that it's going to be Donald Trump based on these polls. And again, based upon the issues like your last segment about what's going on in Gaza, that's created a real rift among Democrats. Joe Biden won the Muslim vote in the U.S. with about 79% 4 years ago. His standing among Muslims right now in the U.S., according to some polling, is in the 17 to 20% range. Yeah. He cannot win key states if Muslims stay home or vote against him. I think it's more likely they stay home rather than support Donald Trump. But if he loses in that base, he doesn't carry the base of young voters like he did before. And there's slippage among African Americans as well. He's got real problems within his party that I think will carry over to the election almost exactly 1 year from now.
Yeah, it's going to be absolutely fascinating to watch. It really is. Steve Gill, thank you so much, Steve, for joining us. Hope to speak to you again soon. Let's come back to Sam Armstrong in the studios, Conservative, general, not Conservative, a commentator, shall we say. It is extraordinary in the background to all of this. Donald Trump at yet another trial. His son's giving evidence. His daughter's going to be forced to give evidence as well. He's giving evidence. He's already been basically told to shut it by the judge, sort of gagging orders on him, stuff he's been saying. What do you make of these cases?
Everything that is getting thrown at him doesn't seem to stick. Yeah. And meanwhile, Joe Biden, and it pains me to say this, is looking more and more senile by the day. And it's got to the stage now where I think it is at least uncertain whether Joe Biden is going to get to the next election and be the Democratic candidate.
It does appear that the Democrats are sort of desperately searching around for somebody. I said at the last election, I would have gone for, best of a bad lot. I'd have gone for Biden over Trump. I think Trump, again, as many were predicting, he was going to basically refuse to accept the outcome of the election. He lost fair and square. He'd won fair and square in 2016. I always thought the Hillary Clinton campaign, the idea that he'd somehow stolen the election was wrong. You brought this on yourselves, the Clintonites. But I've got to be honest with you, I know a lot of people who've always hated Trump, don't like anything he stands for, but have been so disappointed by Biden, who was supposedly this sort of middle America. He wasn't going to, scare the horses. Within hours of getting into office, back the last election, he was signing in like this trans nonsense and the net zero stuff. The man is completely and utterly caught by that sort of left-wing lunatic agenda. I think he's a danger. That said, you look at international affairs, I am terrified of Donald Trump cutting off support for the Ukrainians, basically saying to Russia and China, do what you want. I think this is an incredibly serious election.
Yeah, but look, going in, the Democrats were so clever, they were so virtuous, they were so smug, they were going to fix everything. America was going to stand tall again. And there are so many Americans that look at this now and say, I ain't feeling it. And do you know what? Given how smug you were, given how arrogant you were, given how glib you were, 4 years on, I think I want to give you a punch on the nose to serve you a lesson.
Yeah, and indeed the state of the economy as well. And again, so much of that is due to, lockdowns and things massively pushed by the Democrats.
Yeah, absolutely right. There are Americans that are suffering today as a direct result, just as they are in the UK, of policies pushed gleefully, enthusiastically by the left, and they know who did it, and they're not going to let it go.
No, absolutely. Sam Armstrong, more from you coming up. And